As you can see from the previous section, requirements and models that represent them are the key focus on analysis phase activities. Most of the analyst time is devoted to requirements, such as gathering information about them, formalizing them by using models and prototypes, prioritizing them, and generating and evaluating alternatives. But to fully understand those activities, you need to understand or you need to answer a fundamental question. What are requirements? So system requirements are all the activities that the new system must perform. Or support and the constraint that the new system must meet. So generally, analysts divide system requirements into two categories: functional and non-functional requirements. Functional requirements are the activities that the system must perform. So that includes business uses, functions that the users carry out, and non-functional requirements are the characteristic of the system other than those activities it must perform to support, such as the constraints and the performance goals of the system. In this section, we will use the FERPS Plus requirement model. FERPS model to categorize system requirements. So the meanings of the elements of FERPS Plus are: F stands for functional requirements, U stands for usability requirements, R stands for reliability, P for performance, and S for security requirements. The plus here there are additional categories that we'll see later. So the F in FERPS is equivalent to function or the functional requirements defined previously, and the remaining categories, the U, R, P, and S, describe the non-functional requirements. So let's see what is this usability requirements all about. So it describes the operational characteristics related to users, such as the user interface, related work procedures, online help, and documentation. So for example, the user interface of the smartphone app should behave similarly to other apps. So when they develop an app, then it should be similar to other apps that respond to gestures. So with smartphone, they use gestures such as two finger slides, also for pinching and expanding. So additional requirements must include menu format, color schemes, or use of the organization's logo, and multi-language support. So that's all for usability requirements. And then the next requirement is about the reliability requirements. So this describes the dependability of the system. So how often a system exhibits such behaviors as service outages and incorrect processing, and how it detects and recovers from those problems. And then with performance requirements, it describes the operational characteristics related to measures of workloads, such as throughput and response time. So for example, the client portion of a system might be required to have a zero point 0.5 seconds response time to all button presses, and the server might need to support 100 simultaneous client sessions. So that is with the same response time. So that's for performance. And then for security requirements, it describes how access to the application will be controlled and how data will be protected during storage and transmission. So for example, the application might be password protected, or that it includes encryption. And the plus in FERPS Plus has these additional requirements or additional categories, including design constraints, implementation requirements, interface, physical, and supportability requirements. So for the design requirements, it describes the restriction for to which the hardware and software must adhere. So for example, a cell phone application might be required to use Android operating system, or maybe the size should not more than be 30 megabytes of flash memory storage, or that it consume no more than 10 megabytes of system memory. So requirements such as that, or constraints such as that, is in the design constraints. And then implementation requirements. So this describes constraints such as the required programming language that will be used, and the tools, documentations, and other level of detail, and maybe a specific communication protocol that will be implemented for the system. And then interface requirements, it describes the interactions among systems. So how the system will be linked to other systems. And then with physical requirements, it describes such characteristics of hardware as size, the weight and power consumption, and operating condition. And then supportability requirements, it describes how a system is installed, configured, monitored, and updated. So for example, requirements for a game installed on a home PC might include automatic configuration to maximize performance on existing hardware. It could report error and maybe download of updates from a support server. So that's for supportability requirements. So it is important that all the requirements will be identified and precisely stated early in the development process, and that inconsistencies or trade-offs among them will be resolved.